Hey everyone, it's Carrie here. I'm going to share the story of how I started, built, and sold my soap business. When I turned 40, I was exhausted. Not just tired, I mean the kind of exhausted where your body starts telling you something has to change. At the time, I was teaching full time at a large university, but that was only part of what I was doing. I was also traveling into the inner city schools of Wilmington, Delaware, training teachers, providing professional development, teaching second language students, and managing state testing. On top of all of that, I taught in the master's program and supervised student teachers. And at home, I had 3 boys. 3 boys involved in activities with schedules that seemed to take on a life of their own, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this. My husband was a detective at the time, working shifts, and we basically managed our lives around making sure one of us was always home with the boys. So, between my career, my family, and trying to keep everything running, life was full, really full. And then I turned 40. That summer, the stress caught up with me. I was getting physically sick, and I knew I couldn't keep going the way I had been going. So I did something that felt almost impossible at the time. I took the entire summer off. And I decided that summer was going to be about healing. I tried everything: Reiki, reflexology, massage, therapy, natural products. Honestly, I tried it all. I was searching for anything that would help me feel like myself again. And somewhere during that journey, I started paying more attention to what I was putting on my body. I began switching to natural products. And then I had this thought, maybe I could make some of these myself. I had absolutely no idea where that one thought would lead me. But that was the beginning of Second Spring Naturals. The name came from one of my favorite quotes by Albert Camus. Autumn is a second spring when every leaf is a flower. That quote spoke to me so deeply because I was 40, and at the time, 40 felt like I was supposed to know already what exactly I was doing with my life. But instead, I was realizing that maybe I wanted something different. Maybe 40 wasn't the end of one chapter. Maybe it was my second spring. Maybe I could have another chance to build something completely new. So that's what I did. I started learning. I learned how to make soap myself. I reverse engineered a body cream that I absolutely loved until I finally created a formula I was proud of. I consulted with chemists. I learned about ingredients and formulations. But making the products was only part of it, because suddenly I was also learning how to run a business. I had to figure out accounting, inventory tracking, state and federal regulations and compliance, packaging, shipping, pricing, selling, all of it. And eventually, I made one of the biggest decisions of my life. I left my job. I left my pension, and I walked away from the career I thought I would have forever. I started an Etsy shop. That Etsy shop led to a website, and that website eventually grew into a brand that was sold in stores across the United States, and I loved it. I sold locally too. I even opened up a tiny soap shop in one of my favorite towns by the sea. I had a Facebook group, and people would place orders with me. Sometimes I would personally make deliveries. It was creative, it was exciting, it was hard work, and honestly, it was a blast. There is something incredible about starting with an idea, something you create in your own home, and watching it become a real business, a real product, a real brand, something people actually want to buy. But then I turned 50. And once again, I started asking myself some questions. My boys were grown, and I was heading into the empty nest years. My husband had recently retired, and I realized I wanted, in my next chapter, something a little bit different. I wanted freedom. I wanted to travel with my husband. And after spending years building a business that depended on me being in one place, I knew I didn't want my next chapter to have those same limitations. So I made another big decision. I sold my brand. I sold Second Spring Naturals to one of the stores that had carried my products, a business with several locations. And today, Second Spring Naturals is still selling. I can walk into a store and see products I created coming off the shelves. And I can't even explain how proud that makes me, because I know where it started. It started with me turning 40, feeling overwhelmed, feeling physically sick from stress, taking one summer to stop and heal, and allowing myself to wonder, what if there was another way? That one question changed my entire life. I didn't know how to make soap. I didn't know how to formulate body products. I didn't know how to run a product-based business. I didn't know how to navigate regulations, inventory accounting, or scaling a brand into stores across the country, but I learned one step at a time. And that's why I'm sharing this story now, because I know there are women out there who are sitting exactly where I once sat. Maybe you're successful but exhausted. Maybe you've spent years building a career that no longer feels right. Maybe you have an idea for a business, but you have no idea where to begin. Or maybe you think you've missed your chance. You haven't. My first big reinvention happened at 40, and my next one happened at 50. And now I'm sharing everything I learned, the research, the lessons, the mistakes, the things I wish I had known when I started in my upcoming book. If you've ever dreamed about starting your own business, but you need a little guidance on where to begin, I wrote this for you. My book will be released soon on Amazon. If you'd like to learn from my experience, my research, and everything I learned while building and eventually selling my own brand, just join my email list. I'll let you know as soon as the book's released. Because sometimes your next chapter doesn't begin when you have everything figured out. Sometimes it begins when you finally give yourself permission to believe that a new beginning is still possible.